Hey everybody, how are you doing? This is Bryan Kramer. We are back for another H to H chat. I am broadcasting live from my home in San Jose, California. I'm here with my wonderful, lovely co-host, Suzie McCarthy, who's broadcasting from her home in New York. How are you doing, Suzie?
I am doing very, very well. Some of the humidity is broke here in New York, and so feeling kind of psyched about that at the moment.
That's always a good thing.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I also am so excited to be announcing our guest here today, Michael Krigsman, who is on live with us. Hi, Michael. How are you doing?
Hey, Bryan, how are you? And Suzie, how are you?
Doing
Doing
great.
great. Doing great. So excited. And you are in New York as well, I believe, right?
I'm in
You're in Boston.
Boston,
Okay.
although I'm in Boston, but today, just after this show, I'm hopping on the train down to New York.
Oh, wow. Well, enjoy your train ride. Those are always fun.
Love the Acela from Boston to New York. It's the way to go.
They so need that on the West Coast. I mean, it would completely change things if you could have LA to San Francisco. And supposedly that's coming, right? That it got routed like through the Central Valley, and whole other conversation. But the Acela rocks. I love it.
Well,
That's
there's a company that is building Elon Musk's Hyperloop idea,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And this person is crowdsourcing the idea. He's got
Yes.
like 10,000 people working for him. I can't imagine how that's going to actually work and how he's got it
Right?
organized, but he's doing it.
I love it. I love it. So California jumps straight from normal Amtrak technology to the Hyperloop. That seems perfect, right?
Absolutely.
Well, we're talking hyperloops today as well. Speaking of hyperloops, we're talking about driving the ultimate performance between the CXO and everyone else. You want to talk about a hyperloop? There you go. So there's my wonderful transition. So
Very nice.
so I'm really, really excited to have you on, Michael, because this is something that you've done as an analyst. You've studied, talked about, presented on, keynoted about, and you have a show, CXO Talk, which we can obviously see behind you. Now, before we jump into a great line of what I think great line of questions I have for you, can you give us a background on you real quick?
Sure. So I have been, as you said, an industry analyst looking at issues such as CIO, innovation. What's the relationship, the intersection between technology and the human factor, so to speak, in the enterprise? And about 2 years ago,
Sorry I couldn't get to it fast enough. I didn't think you were to do it that soon. That's awesome.
the signature human-to-human sound.
Oh, there it is again.
Very nice.
Human-to-human is important.
And
Okay.
There you go. I think you broke it. I think that has to be the record for like the most in like a 60-second span.
that's where
Write
we
it
start
down.
using this sound.
All right. So just over 2 years ago, I had this idea to bring together the people that are shaping the future, and thus CXO Talk was born. And so with CXO Talk, each week, it's at least once a week, although we've done as many as 2, sometimes 3 shows during a week. We bring together senior executives from the largest and most well-known brands in the world. Companies like Microsoft, SAP, HP, Oracle, the General Services Administration, the Federal Communications Commission. It's a really, really long list. And the common denominator is each of these folks who is a guest has been involved doing something very highly innovative. Their approach to management, to technology, to the way they run their business is forward thinking. They're all about innovation. And so nowadays, this is how I spend most of my time organizing the show, getting it together, conducting the interviews, writing about it, and so forth.
Well, it sounds like you're producing a lot of content. And I would love to actually, as part of the questions I have for you, we're going to dig into that a little bit. But one of the things that that I do want to jump into is about your CXO talk. You've interviewed awesome people in the background and in the in the history of your show. I'm curious, what have you learned along the way that maybe you didn't expect to learn, or it really drove the way you now think?
And Bryan, you're going to be a guest on CXO Talk this week, in fact, on Wednesday.
Yes.
I'm excited about that.
I'm excited too.
Thank you so much.
So I think we've had so many different types of guests. It's very diverse. But I think the common thread, there's a couple of common threads. Number one is there's a sense of humility, a sense of being open, and a sense of being able to learn and able to teach among this diverse set of guests that we've had. Very few of these people are sitting in an ivory tower. They have their sleeves rolled up. They don't spend the time in their office for the most part, but they spend their time working with their teams, their organizations, the people who are actually getting the work done. And this cuts across, the people that we've had are CEOs, CIOs, chief marketing officers, chief digital officers, in every kind of organization you can imagine. And so it's very difficult to draw a single common thread about industry or position, so you have to then look at the kind of attributes and the mindset and the outlook that these people share in common.
So give me an example. Who's somebody that you, or a few people that you interviewed that really stand out?
It's tough because there are anybody who is on CXO Talk gets there because they are highly accomplished. And I would say we have at least probably between 10 and 20 requests to be on the show for every person that we select.
Wow.
So these are unique people without any exception. But one who stands out is Dr. John Halamka, who is the Chief Information Officer for Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, which is a major Harvard-affiliated medical center here in Boston. He also was the CIO for Harvard Medical School, and he sits on a bunch of committees. But the reason he was so fabulous is because he's an interesting person. He's not just a CIO. He plays Japanese flute. He runs a working farm with animals and vegetables, and he gets up in the morning and feeds the animals and does whatever it is that you do. I'm a city guy myself, so I don't really know, but but he's running a working farm, and yet here he is, one of the most prominent medical profession CIOs in the world. And I have so much respect for that because it's not just about business, it's about bringing a broad perspective to the work. And I think his work benefits from that as well. So for me, when I see that, it's very inspiring. I find that kind of story very personally inspiring.
So let's dive into the topic of the show today is the relationship between the CXO and everyone else. I know right now that things are changing, positions are changing. You look at things like the CMO and the CIO and technology and when the skill sets needed, not only just between them, but also them and everyone else at the company, and everything's getting redefined to the point where I've seen blogs, I've seen articles where they're starting to change position names to all kinds of things. The chief technology marketing officer. Like, there's so many different things out there that people are trying to wrap their arms around to see where the heck all of this is going. Where do you see this all going? Where is that relationship between the CXO and everyone else?
Well, Bryan, you've raised such an interesting point. there is this proliferation of job titles. And I think there's a couple of things that are going on. So number one, you have this shifting landscape. So for example, you have the rise of the chief digital officer. And on CXO Talk, we've had a number of chief digital officers. We've had Perry Hewitt, who's the chief digital officer, the CDO of Harvard, Srinivasan, who's the CDO of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, the CDO of the Guardian newspaper. So we've had a bunch of CDOs, but it's a very interesting position because what is it actually? Well, it's somewhat of a nebulous position, and I know the CIOs out there are now beating their heads saying, it's not nebulous at all, but it sits at the intersection of digital strategy for the business with technology as an important component. So when we think about digital, and sometimes you hear the words digital enterprise, you hear the word digital transformation, it's all kinds of code words in a sense. And it's easy to think that digital in this sense means we're going to be doing online marketing. We're going to increase our spend on marketing. But in fact, this notion of digital transformation cuts far more deeply across the organization. It involves not just your marketing, although of course that's part of it, but really it involves rethinking your business model, rethinking the activities that you undertake in order to take full advantage of the online medium. So this means thinking about if you're a pizza delivery store, for example, a pizza restaurant, and now you want to have an online business model, this means thinking about your operation. So it's not just marketing, but it's, well, how are we selling? What's the e-commerce component like? Now we have to have a very strong and almost on-demand delivery model. So this is just a small store. If you're Amazon.com, which is digital by its nature, the core business model, it's not just about advertisement, it's about selling online, delivering online, offering customer service online, and then extending that. So it's it's your supply chain as well. So the chief digital officer is a prime example of a role that involves business and technology. Now, the CIO, you could make the argument that the CIO should be the chief digital officer, but historically the CIO is a technology-based role. Now, it's important for the CIO to be intimately connected with the business, but fundamentally the digital strategy is not just about technology. Technology is an enabler. Likewise, you could say that this chief marketing officer should be the CDO. But again, the CMO looks at things through a particular lens as opposed to a broad-based lens.
Does it matter how big the company is? Does size matter?
Well, of course, size matters in some respects. But from this point of view, there needs to be a relationship between senior management and the people who are doing the work. And if that relationship is a healthy relationship, and this does not matter, size in this case does not matter at all. If that relationship is a healthy relationship, and senior management is aligned and connected and in communication in the right way with the people who are doing the work, then you're going to have much more of a greater likelihood that the execution will be done well, and that the strategy of the business will be more closely connected to the actual execution of what's taking place on the ground. So from that standpoint, this is relevant to every size business.
So okay, that's good to know. Now, how many companies would you say, and I don't mean in numbers, just in general terms, would you say the CXOs are not talking amongst each other? They are still in that siloed working in silos, operating with their goals, and not continuing the work that they need to together.
Well, now this definitely is a size issue, because think about, if you have, then you sure hope that the owners are just meeting informally. They know what's going on. They're sharing their thoughts on a regular basis. But in larger organizations, you still have a lot of silos. You have people in customer service who may be disconnected from even people in marketing. And we've all had the experience where we call up customer service and we say, what's the status of my order? Say, oh, I'll have to transfer you to the marketing department, to the other department. And that usually is indicative of a disconnect between systems, right? Because, hey, the customer service people don't have visibility to what's going on with the ordering system, for example. And it's very possible that that system disconnect, the technology disconnect, reflects a disconnect between those departments at a human level.
I'm trying.
Hey, I'm waiting for your signature. And so organizationally, so when you have system, and I haven't seen research about this, but it would be interesting. So if you have disconnects at a system level, to what extent, which happens all the time, to what extent does that reflect disconnects at an organizational level among the people? It's an interesting question, and I suspect it happens a lot.
Okay, so now I'm curious. We're talking about the relationship between the CXOs and everyone else. So now I'm curious about the everyone else. How is communication? How could it be? How is it working, and how could it be better with the rest of the company and the C-suite?
It's such a good question. Are you, so as a senior leader, what's your goal? Is your goal to be the hero, or is your goal to to coalesce the team, bring the team together, and coordinate the team to achieve it in a particular direction, to achieve a specific goal? And I think there are two different leadership styles, but in general, in today's environment where you have social media, of which, Bryan, of course, you're the big expert, and Suzie is amazing as well, where you have social media that's bringing transparency not just to relationships with customers towards the enterprise, towards the company, but transparency inside the company as well. There's an opportunity for a much more team-oriented kind of approach. Now, that's not to say that you're not going to have a hierarchy, because you need the hierarchy, and people have to play different roles. But the extent to which a leader can be transparent and, again, coalesce the team and inspire the team so that it's not just shooting out directives. Team A, you do this. Team B, you do this. Report back. Tell me, rigid, hierarchical, top-down manner. Then I think you're going to the extent that you can be more flexible and more collaborative, I think you're going to achieve better results in today's world.
So that's an interesting word, collaborative and collaboration. It's a hot topic right now. And so one of my questions is, what do you see? What is the definition? What's your definition of a quality of an efficient and collaborative organization?
So again, you're asking these wonderful questions. So a collaborative organization has to have clear leadership. That means clear mandate. That means a clear strategy. Because if you don't have that to begin with, then how can you coalesce the team and help guide the team in a particular single direction? So collaboration begins with clear strategy. When you have a clear strategy, and that strategy makes sense, then collaboration means having, first, number one, the intention, the goal, the desire to bring the team, again, I keep talking about it this way, to bring the team together, But you have to have clarity that this is something that you want to do. Because collaboration is not the only way of, it's not the singular way of operating in the world. But if you are going to be collaborative, that means have the goal, have the intention to bring people together, and then actually work with, that means seek input from, work with, share what the teams are doing, what the team is doing, what the people on the team are doing.
This is so timely for us, for our company, Pure Matter. We're going to be going on an offsite next week, towards the end of next week, and so now I've got questions that are also helping me. And here's my question: how do you get clear? What creates the best clarity? What is the way that you would say, you know what, if you want to get clear, you need to do X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that clarity results from, there's two ways to get clarity. Number one is a sweeping away process, which is to say, it's this, but not that. So you start with a large ball and you kind of cut away the pieces until you are, start with a piece of granite. It's how a sculptor works. You start with a piece of granite, you cut away the pieces, and you are left with that which is correct, which is accurate, which is a strategy that you think will work. So keep removing the extraneous pieces. That's number one. The other way of going about it is to build up from known principles, the way somebody working in clay might add clay. And so you start with what you believe is a core or a ground truth, that I know this to be the case. And now there's a wrinkle in that, or there's a set of constraints. So let's add those constraints on, and let's build up until we get to the sculpture that we like. So there's two ways of going about it. At the end of the day, there is no such thing as perfect clarity. And so therefore, at the end of the day, we have to try, we essentially do a clarity experiment, which says this addresses the constraints, this addresses the goals. And there's this term which we've all heard that I don't like, fail fast, because it sounds like failure when in fact it's not failure. And a more accurate term is experiment quickly. So you try it out. You check the results. So clarity comes from reality, from the reality of testing. You check the results out. You see, how did we do? And then you do it again, and you iterate. And at each course correction, so to speak, you're going to end up closer to that goal. And then you're going to hit upon something that says, you know, this is really good. This works. We need to tweak it, which is yet another example of iteration, but this works. And then you go there. That's my thought.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's a complex topic. It's not it's interesting because we're talking about something that we want to boil down to something that's simple, that has you know, the word clear represents you know, something that's clean and easy and simple, and yet it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of complexities to get to that, especially in a big organization. But I understand exactly what you're saying. That was a good way to put it. Yeah.
I was going to say it's particularly difficult as an organization becomes larger. It's particularly difficult, but even in a smaller company where you have multiple perspectives. So in a large organization, you could say you have multiple interest groups, right? So one department wants to do this, another department wants to do that, and so that's why you have this whole idea of decisions made by committee or terrible decisions, because there's no clarity on what the actual goal is. With a smaller organization, you have the same thing, only it's individual. And so you end up having these multiple perspectives, and if you can't unify the multiple perspectives into a single course of action, then you have no clarity, and you're kind of in trouble.
Yeah, so that's a good place for this. We don't want that.
No,
we
we
need
don't want
clarity so that we can have this.
We want humans.
Humans, yes.
Human.
There we go. So what do you think are the big changes that need to happen between the CXO positions and their relationship with the rest of the company in order to be successful?
I think it really, we were just talking about it, be more collaborative. Be more transparent, be more collaborative, be more respectful. And especially if you're a senior executive in a large corporation, it's very easy to lose touch with what's going on. If you're a senior executive in a large corporation, it's very hard to find people who will tell you the truth. I mean, imagine you're a high exec inside a big company, and you're trying to get clarity, and you're surrounded by yes people who agree with you all day long because they just want to feed your ego. That's not the path to clarity.
Yeah. Right.
So being open, getting out there, talking to your peers, talking to the people who are conducting the business, spending a lot of time with your customers.
Yep.
And I should have brought that one up first. Spending time with your customers, listening to what they have to say, taking their criticism, putting it into action, not taking it personally, being open about it, and so then customer feedback, customer criticism, customer ideas become part of that rapid succession of experiments that we were talking about, where you're iterating to always be improving. That's a key point.
Yep. I think the always be improving is a big one. Yeah, and I completely get that. So let's talk about technology. Let's talk about where do you think companies get it right, and where do you think they get it wrong around the technology that they use for their company?
You know, there was a time in my earlier career when I was writing about IT failures, and I probably was one of the most prolific people in the world writing about why IT projects succeed or IT projects fail. I don't do that anymore too much because I decided to focus on the more positive aspect of innovation. But the key here is success with technology actually is not about the technology itself in the enterprise. Sounds like a paradoxical thing to say, but enterprise technology is all about process, bringing the right technology to bear on a particular process, bringing people, just like we were talking about a few minutes ago, bringing people together from multiple groups, different departments, to collaborate so that the solution, the technology solution that's built, and the process solution, and what I mean by that is basically the business solution. So what are we going to do, right? We're buying technology for a company. We're going to install it. We're not buying 3 different ERP systems or 3 different CRM systems. We're buying one. That means we have to get on the same page. And so if you are on the same page and people are able to communicate across these different silos, organizational boundaries, information boundaries, again, you hear all different kinds of terms for this. But if you get on the same page, these different groups on the same page, now you are collaborating. And that leads to innovation. Collaboration leads to innovation. And so when I used to write about IT failures, and now I write about innovation, it's 2 sides of it's the flip side of the same coin. And so the mistake that companies make with technology is they focus on, oh, well, we need a tool. Yeah, we need a CRM. Why do we need a CRM system? Well, because we need one. And everybody has a CRM system. But how are we aligning the different departments around that? What are we actually going to be using it for? Are we just automating the same inefficient process that we've done before? Or are we actually doing something that's useful and beneficial? So that's the real issue when it comes to technology in the enterprise.
Yeah, that's it's interesting that you talk about technology not being the challenge. It's really the people as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's the combination of the two coming together, and we talk about technology as being the solution to all of our prayers. If we just get the right technology, then we'll be great. We'll have everything working just fine. But really, our challenges just shift in a different direction, because now we've got to use that technology combined with our our own human communication platforms, and how are we going to work together, and so on and so forth. And again, it becomes this complex challenge that we want to solve in order to make it a simple way for us all to work. So here's the deal, Michael. I have so many more questions for you, and that's a good thing, because this is such a really great interview. And I may chime in here as we go, but we're at the half an hour. I want to make sure that everyone's questions that are coming in are getting addressed. This is about the time where Suzie takes over and pass the baton for her. But you will most certainly hear from me again, and I will chime in both on a couple of these dangling questions that I have, as well as some comments here and there. So with that said, I'm going to pass this over to Suzie, and I will talk to you in a little bit.
Great. And Bryan, I have to say, one of the reasons that I'm so interested in your work is because you focus on the human dimension and success in business. Technology is a problem that can be solved very often with money, and that means it's not the hardest class of problems. The hardest class of problems consists of that human dimension problem.
I love that.
There you go. Couldn't agree more. And I'm excited to talk to you about that on Wednesday as well.
That's such a great transition, actually, to some of our questions. I love that. I mean, I always talk about the shiny thing syndrome, and I think it is definitely the challenge, right? It's just kind of throwing stuff, just throwing money at, you mentioned CRM platforms, all these different things, and then it never gets integrated, right, within the actual workplace, and all of that, the leadership. So, all right, guys. First of all, I'm getting some awesome questions. Go ahead and keep tweeting them in, please. We have just some great topics here coming through, so I'm going to try and weed through some of these. So first of all, I want to let's see. I want to go ahead and begin with, I have a few kind of comments that I'm turning into really great questions, because you've been so thought-provoking here. So I have a comment from Cherise Maynard, and it's great. She says, I think old school C-suite execs can't grasp the concept of collaboration versus dictatorship. So I think I've seen there's kind of been a similar sentiment throughout the chat. So when we're talking about something like this, say legacy, etc., generational issue, whatever it is, what would you advise, is the way to kind of try to bring this on board, and this different mindset that you're talking about?
Wow, Cherise, it's a great question. And I was in a meeting one time with some senior execs of one of the largest healthcare providers or insurance in the country. And they were rolling out the software, and the executive said, we're very collaborative here. And then you start to see how he interacts with people and the kind of strategies and things that he's trying to do, and you realize, and dictatorship is exactly the way to put it.
Wow.
It's tough, it's a tough call. I think you have to kind of feel out, first off, how committed emotionally, mentally, intellectually, how committed is the senior executive to his or her dictatorship approach? Because let's face it, there are some people out there who that's the way they are, and they're not going to change, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I hate to say, if you're in that kind of a situation, you know, and very often such people are not open to hearing comments or suggestions. And in fact, if you make a comment, you may be putting your job at risk. Right? So if you're in that kind of situation that's very extreme, then pretty much I think you have to grin and bear it or find another job. There, right, Suzie? I mean,
yep, I agree. I love how straightforward you're being. I think that's, yeah.
Okay, but then there's another group of people who their heart's in the right place.
Yeah.
And they want to be collaborative, they want to listen, but they just don't, they're kind of clueless. They don't really, and I'm using these terms like clueless and so forth, but these are human terms. It doesn't matter what position you are, and you may be very talented. If you don't, that doesn't mean you're going to be skillful in all areas, and especially in these human-to-human communication areas. I love that. So when you have somebody who really does, their heart is in the right place and they want to learn, then you've got to find a way to kind of encourage them. Toss out some ideas. Don't try to make big changes rapidly, because that's not likely to work. But try to push the envelope a little bit. Make suggestions. Say, hey, how about if we write a blog post? I shouldn't be specific because it just so much depends on the specifics of the circumstance, and it's very hard to generalize. Right. But when you have somebody that's open, try to push them gently, slowly, softly, but a little bit of a nudge to start. Yeah,
yeah, I love that. So I think this kind of leads into a great question that we have from Lisa. So she says, if a customer-focused culture isn't coming from the C-suite, how do others change culture from the bottom up? So this is kind of related to that a little bit.
It's another really good question. I think it depends where you are in the organization. So you have to be realistic to get a sense of, you know, how much influence do you have in your particular role. But regardless, the thing to do is you do a great job, no matter what. You serve the customer. And if you're in a company with, you know, any kind of sensibility at all, eventually that will get recognized. I'll tell you a quick personal story. I once had a client. I was working very closely with a client and on a project that was quite successful. And we had lots of customers. These were, in this case, internal customers and external customers who wanted, you know, had questions, wanted help, whatever the case may be. And there were certain channels and procedures that were set up. And my client, my primary contact, he was like the man of no. You know, no, we can't help you. No, go away. And so what ended up happening is people would go around him and come to me, and I would say, sure, I can help you. You know, just tell me what you need. You know, wherever I could, wherever it's appropriate. And it was the right. It was, in retrospect, it was the right at the time, and now looking back, it was the right thing to do. And I think you do the best you can for the customer. Provide exemplary support every way that you possibly can, and hopefully other people will pick up on it and you'll get some recognition as well. Yeah.
I love that. And I love what you said about, you know, you do the right thing, right? You begin with the customer service and then it goes out. I love that. So we have a question from Dave Cox. He's asking, how do you drive clarity amongst C-level execs? Don't you need that before anything is disseminated to everyone else?
Clarity among C-level execs means that across these multiple departments, because each C-level exec is representing some particular organization. So it means that clarity in this case means that they're on the same page, that they agree with a common strategy. This is why this is one of the reasons that silos happen, because the marketing guy or the marketing gal has a particular set of goals and constraints. The IT person has their goals and constraints, and they may not be the same. At the upper level of the company, there, of course, are going to be goals relating to revenue or customer adoption or whatever. It's going to depend on the business. But if you're working inside a large organization and you want to get clarity in this sense across the C-suite, meaning agreement across the C-suite, man, you got a big job ahead of you.
Yeah.
I'd start trying to get clarity inside the marketing, whatever organization you're in, try to get clarity there first.
Michael, I just want to jump in real quick with a quick question. Who, and I know there's a follow-up question that Susie's going to ask you here from someone, but who is good at clarity?
I think clarity is a function of an individual. You'd sure hope that every individual should have clarity. I mean, if you're an executive in a company, if you don't have clarity about what you're doing and about what your organization is doing and about what the company is doing, why are you there? Because that, in some sense, that's your first job, is to have clarity. And if you don't, you have a big problem, and the company has a big problem. But clarity, to begin with, is an individual thing. Then you have clarity and alignment of a team. The best, in CXO Talk, the best executives that we've interviewed are the ones that have a very clear, specific agenda. They know why they're doing it. They know how it relates to the broader company goals, and they have a clear understanding and a realistic plan for getting there. So you have clarity on all of these different levels.
So so this actually plays into another really great comment. I'm excited we have Warren Whitlock on the chat today. So he says, kind of overall, he says, this sounds like we're talking about an institution dealing with external pressures rather than building something new. So let's talk for a second. A lot of this we're talking about transformation. How do we, change all of this? What about, as Warren is an entrepreneur, awesome with all this. So if you're coming at it from that perspective, where do you begin?
So every organization, he says institution, but I'll just say organization,
yeah.
So I'm assuming that's what he means.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So every organization faces external pressures. Have you ever come across any organization ever that doesn't? We all, as every company, every institution, every organization faces the pressure of revenue or customers, or there's some type of metric or something that keeps them in business. Now, I think the distinction between a startup, shall we talk about startups versus established companies?
Yeah, I think so. That'd be great. Okay,
so startups have unique challenges, and it's also easier in some senses, although I'm sure any entrepreneur hearing me say that is dying right now because it ain't easier. But in terms of clarity, with a startup, you are able to build your business model from scratch. There is nothing. You're starting from a blank slate. And the challenge, therefore, becomes developing a business model that will be a sustainable business model. Steve Blank, who's one of the great entrepreneurial educators of our time, and also has been on CXO Talk a couple of times, he talks about startups as being organizations that are in search of a business model. So the challenge with a startup is not building the business model, it's figuring out what's going to be a sustainable business model. The challenge with a large organization is changing business model. So a startup needs to find a business model that's going to work. It means doing something new by definition because it doesn't exist before. Large organization needs to take their existing model that works and adapt it to the present and changing circumstances, and that means innovation. Now, in some industries, in quite a number of industries, I talk with, recently we've had CEOs of a number of services organizations, large, multi-billion-dollar companies on CXO Talk. And in these cases, they're running two different business models simultaneously. So on the one hand, under one roof, they are having to deal with their traditional labor business model, but at the same time, they're now labor arbitrage is going away. You know, the economics are, I shouldn't say it's going away, but the economics of labor arbitrage are changing significantly. And so now they're trying to find a more digitally oriented business model that involves different types of higher value consulting. And so if you're a services company, that means you're running both of these business models under one roof, and people often call it changing the wings on the plane while the plane is flying. So so that's the challenge for a big company, whereas for a startup, man, you just want to get the plane off the ground, but you hope it doesn't crash once you've lifted 3 feet off the ground. So there are different types of challenges.
Yeah. No, I love that. I feel like there's so much substance in what you just said. I'm just like digesting it right now. So I want to. I think that's just great. I want to jump into, let's see, Christy has a really good question. She says, where do the CXO, CIO, and CMO cross, and how do they best interact to be most effective?
So that was CIO, CMO.
CXO, CIO, and CMO.
So to me, CXO is a generic title, could be anybody in the C-suite. So, but shall we talk for a second specifically about the CIO and the CMO?
Yes. I know that's, we talked about that about a month ago on H2H chat, just kind of the changing roles, and I think getting your insight would be fantastic.
Okay, so in my view, here's the deal between the two of them, and I talk to a lot of CIOs, I talk to a lot of CMOs, and really innovative ones, and also ones who are not so innovative, although those guys and women are not on CXO Talk, for sure. We get if you're on CXO Talk, you're innovative. Otherwise, why are you there?
I think that's what everyone loves about your show, is you can go there and know that you're going to find the latest and greatest stuff.
I hope so. Yeah. So, okay, so CIO, CMO. Here's the deal. In the older days, meaning 20 years ago, 10 years ago, changing 5 years ago, so the older days, long time ago. Not so long ago. In the older days, the CIO was a job in IT. It was all about infrastructure and computers. Think about the original IT people with their men with mainframes, and women, mostly men in those days, in mainframes, although some women, mainframes wearing white suits. Because you had to keep the business away, because these were very highly technical, complex, expensive pieces of machinery, and required specialized education. Today, fast forward, the world has changed, but that legacy is still with us. So what that means is the career path for IT generally is a technical career path. Now what's happened, though, with the absolute proliferation of technology, marketers are experts in technology. Not only that, marketers are more expert in technology about marketing than IT people are, for the most part. And not only that, the IT people don't have the expertise in understanding what marketing has to even be doing on a detailed, finely grained level. Yeah. But not only that, even if everybody is on the same page, the reality is that marketing has a different set of constraints than IT. So for IT, key constraints are, well, very often for IT people, my hat goes out to these folks. To IT people, it's like, cut the IT budget, and oh, by the way, you better still innovate. You're the chief innovation officer, but we're cutting your budget. Ooh, that's a tough one. But security, getting integration with various programs that marketing wants to use, getting the data out where it needs to be. This takes time. Security, data integration, all of this stuff, by its nature, is slow. It doesn't happen overnight. Marketing comes in. The CMO says to IT, "We got a new customer, and next week we're doing a campaign. Monday, we're doing this campaign. We need something from you." And IT says, "Well, but we're totally scheduled and I don't have the resources, we've cut our budget. CMO says, I don't care. I don't care at all. Not my problem because my customer's demanding it. Right?
Yeah.
So what do we do? And this is the reality in many companies, I think. So what do we do? If my ideal is, if I'm a CIO, I just gave a talk at CRM Evolution. Somebody asked this question. Here's what I said. Okay, if you're a CIO, I suggest let marketing have the leeway to use the tools that they want. They've got their own technology budget anyways, and they're going to use the tools that they want whether you agree or you don't. So let's just deal with that reality, accept it, but then establish some clear guidelines. We call this governance. Establish some clear guidelines that say, hey, marketing, you have to be sure we have some security policies, and this is really important, this security stuff, and so maintain it. And if you don't maintain it, then get it fixed or don't use these tools you want. Okay, that's reasonable. Number 2 is marketing. If you want access to the corporate data, you need to give us a little bit of time. It's not as simple as just flipping a switch. And then marketing, recognize that if IT and the CIO are saying no to you, it might be just because they have outmoded ideas, but that's changing. More than likely, they have their own set of constraints and pressures, and you guys try to sit down and work it out and collaborate. And again, it keeps coming back to this some type of human-to-human way where you're, hey, like to sit down and have coffee together and work it out as a team.
Yeah.
How about that for a crazy idea?
Yeah. No, yeah. It's so funny how it comes down to those kind of basic concepts, right? Collaboration. So someone tweeted out, can't we just all agree that silos are bad, right? And just move on. And I think the problem is you have this, it's kind of, I think my response on the chat was pretty much everyone knows that silos are bad at this point, right? The problem is the inertia. And I think that's a lot of the stuff that you're talking about here.
Suzie, it's the inertia, but there's also another dimension. It's the inertia, but where does the inertia come from? The inertia comes from the fact that a large organization, the goal of a large organization is stability. Bruce Cleveland, who's a top enterprise, one of the top enterprise venture capitalists, was on the show, and he spoke about this. The purpose of a large organization is the maintenance of stability, which is maintaining our business model, which is to say our jobs, because that's what we're all thinking about. We're maintaining our jobs. That means we're going to sell the stuff that we know the customers want to buy. That has worked for us yesterday. And it's that set of pressures that drives the inertia not to change. And the best companies are the ones who are experimenting with business models. Alex Osterwalder, who is another great, wrote a book called The Business Model Generation, and something called the Business Model Canvas. He's one of the top business model experts in the world. When he was on CXO Talk, he spoke about this. The best companies are always thinking about their business model and experimenting. And it gets back to what we were talking about before, changing the wings on the plane while the plane is still flying. Yeah.
So I want to I have a few additional questions, but I want to bring something up just that our community has talked about in the past, and I just have to know, what's your thought on holacracy, right? On the Zappos model that we're seeing in other places, which is this flattening idea, right? Where, I mean, as you know, right, moving beyond just completely shifting the business model. What are your thoughts on that? Is this something viable for the future? Does this make sense as far as clarity? How does that work?
You try it, and if it works, then you go forward. And you don't change your business just like that. If you have an established business, you're not going to say to your existing customers, hey, customers, we're changing our business model. See you later. We don't want your revenue, your money anymore. We're not going to sell you our products. We're not going to support the products. You don't do that.
Yeah.
What you do is you try and experiment.
Yeah.
Try a department. Run I was going to say a skunk works, but that's not really this. Take a department and try shifting it around. See if it works.
So it's that experimentation.
Yeah, experiment, because you're going to have different business models, different cultural models are going to, you need to adapt it to your specific set of circumstances. And so one type of business, it may not fly. Another type of business, you may have a business that has a very small central staff, say a franchise operation that has a relatively small central staff, and then lots of franchisees out there in the world. So your constituency are your franchisees. That's going to be a different model than a Zappos that has a large centralized staff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And a different type of cultural model as well. But even I'll give you another personal example. I once worked with a very large distributed floor covering manufacturer, distributor of floor coverings. They had lots and lots of stores. They were rolling out a CRM system. They had massive trouble getting buy-in from the stores, from the franchisees. They couldn't obligate the franchisees. And so in a case like that, you're forced, if you want to be successful and have adoption of the technology, you're forced to be collaborative and find ways and be responsive to the needs of your constituency. And if you're increasingly responsive to the needs of your constituency, it's going to give you a lot of breathing room and a lot of space to then experiment with flattening organization structures or other kind of experiments that you might want to try.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I like that answer again, and I think once again it kind of relates to what we were talking about with as far as technology, right? Which is you're not jumping on one thing. You're really you're figuring out the organization. You're thinking through what you have. So I want to end kind of with a question from Cheval. He wants to know who in your mind is a company or perhaps a person that you're looking at and saying, this is really kind of a great model to follow, moving forward. Maybe a company, who you've been watching and you feel like they're doing a really good job.
Well, I tell you, this past week I have been watching you and Bryan Kramer with what, because I do these weekly CXO talk shows, and I'm always thinking, how do we attract a community and build a community? And right now, I'm watching you and Bryan. That's the company I'm watching. You guys are doing a great job.
Like speechless right now. Thank you. Thanks. Awesome. It's nice we can thank you very much personally, and we can give a huge shout out to our community. Who's just we love our community, and we love just all this great conversation. As you can see, I mean, I have about 5 other questions in the wings. There was a whole lot of conversation. If you feel like sticking around at all, but on the chat, there's lots of questions still about technology and trying to figure out that balance. So we didn't get there, but thank you so much, and this has absolutely been a blast. I can't wait to tune into CXO Talk with Bryan a little bit later this week.
I'm excited too, and
awesome.
Ask your audience to go to cxotalk.com. We have great conversations. Can I just give a 15-second pitch for CXO Talk? Do you give me permission?
Please.
Go for it.
So CXO Talk, we're just about ready to launch a new site. We are bringing sponsors on board. We have lots more content than we've ever had before, and I hope that everybody will take a look at cxotalk.com. And thank you for indulging me.
And we have sent out, while you were talking, Michael, I've been sending out the link to your site, so everybody has that as well.
Bless you. Bless you.
So we'll make sure that they do that, and then also I put out a link for our interview on Wednesday so everyone can share that. And you're going to get on, I'm sure, afterwards or at some point, if you don't mind, to get on Twitter, because there are more questions. We could not get to all of them. There's like a lot of questions, so you don't have to answer all of them. But if you see a few here and there that you can get to, that'd be great. You've got a lot of admirers, both new and old, on H2H chat. You are an absolutely wonderful, very, very awesome guest, and we can't thank you enough for being here with us today and giving us some of your insights and some of your experience. And we know that this is just the tip of the iceberg, so I definitely would encourage everyone to go to CXO Talk if you want to see some really awesome stuff. Please go there. And so thanks again, Michael. And then just real quickly, obviously we too wouldn't be here if it weren't for our sponsors. So a quick shout out for our sponsors: New Star, MasterCard, Cisco, IBM, Little Bird, Hootsuite, Fresh Desk, Speakeasy, Influitive, Mutual Mind, and Cox Communications. Thank you all. And finally, our community. We love you guys so much. You guys have no idea. We're sitting here trying to keep up with all your tweets, and that's just the awesome part of this whole thing. So thank you guys for always taking part. Hopefully we get to share some of your questions, and we've got some fun stuff and things that we're going to be doing differently that Suzie and I have cooking up over the next few weeks. So we've got some new things coming in, but we'll let you know as that goes along. So until the next time, cheers, and we will see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. You man.